A third ministry, the third part of the job description of a leader is communicate. Communicate. What we're talking about here is transferring that vision to the followers. Okay, you have an idea of where God's taking you. You say, I believe God wants to move us from here to there. Now, how are the people that you're leading going to get that? They're only going to get that if you communicate it to them. So what makes good communication skills? Let me speak very simply of some communication skills all of us need to work on. The first one is to listen. Pay attention to the people you're leading. What are they communicating about the grasp of what we're trying to communicate? Be observant. Be observant. Notice the words people use. Notice tone of voice. Notice body language. I think a good leader trains himself to be observant. A good leader is always looking and watching and inquiring. I wonder why he said it that way. Not to be paranoid, but to be a good learner, to be a good leader. I wonder why he looks so discouraged. You know, and you're listening. You're listening not only for words, but tone of voice, body language. You know, what's going on here? If you're going to be a good communicator, do that. Learn to interact with those you're leading. Develop the skill of asking good questions. This has not been one of my long-time strengths, and I would encourage you to learn with me how to ask good questions. What's an open question? What's an open question? That's a closed. Yeah, closed question is one that can be answered with one word: yes, no. So an open question then is one that cannot be answered with yes or no. And you know, you can think about this in everyday life. You know, hey, feeling pretty good today? Okay, what are people's possible answers to that? Yes or no. But you could say, hey, what's one of the highlights of your week? What are some particular challenges you've been facing lately? Okay, they can't answer that one, yes or no. Okay, now they got to give you something. Now they got to tell you something about their lives or their souls. I think asking good questions is a skill in leadership that all of us should work on our whole lives. It is such a wonderful tool to learn to ask people good questions that will draw them out. Learn to do that. Let's all learn to do that, of asking those kind of questions where you're with someone. You know, if you don't know what else, sometimes I'll have people come to me and they'll ask me for my time, you know, can I meet with you? And I honestly don't know why. I don't know why they're coming. You know, and we could spend a half hour, 45 minutes just chit-chatting. You know, and it's okay to chit-chat for a little while. I don't usually chit-chat for 45 minutes, but, you know, how's your day? What's going on with you? But then usually I'll ask something like, what's on your heart? And if I ask something like that, now I'm saying, I care about what you're feeling. I care about what you're thinking. I care about what you're going through right now. What's on your heart? Now, they can't answer that with yes or no. They got to tell you something about themselves. Or some question like that, where you're drawing them out. Learn to ask good questions that way. Work at it. Practice it. And then I would say also, speak. When you speak to people, try to make good eye contact. And especially in a smaller group, I think it's so important that you make eye contact with everybody. In a larger group, like if you're speaking publicly in front of hundreds of people, you're not going to be able to make eye contact with everyone, but I would encourage you to try to make eye contact with every part of the group. And I know even in our church setting, our worship services, those of you that sit in the front row, I struggle the most with you. Not personally, but to make eye contact with people in the front row, I have to look down at them. That's not a good feeling, looking down at someone. But it's good to make that eye contact. And then also the people on the periphery, the people on the far left, people on the far right, people in the back. So if you're speaking to a group of people, try to make eye contact at various parts of the room. So you're looking at different parts of the room. So it's not like the people on the wings are sitting there saying, we're not even here, are we? He never even looks our way. You know, I could stand up in my chair and scratch the top of my head and you never notice, you know. But I would encourage you to just, you learn as you speak to make eye contact. And if you're in a smaller group, you have a group on your campus or a group of employees you're talking to, or even your own family. Make eye contact. I can still remember a couple of times when our kids were growing up. Uh, it's confession. I tend to live in high gear, and I don't like to stop or slow down. And I can remember one time, one of our daughters was trying to talk to me when she was maybe 8 years old or so, and I was going about my business, and she was trying to tell me whatever was important on her, and grabbing my cheeks, turning my face toward hers, and says, "Daddy, I can't see you listening to me." "Daddy, I can't see you listening at me." And ouch. She wanted to see me listening to her. She wanted me to make eye contact. So even with your kids, to make eye contact. If a younger person, a child is talking to you, don't be afraid to get down on his or her level and listen. Or if you're on the other end of life, you're talking to people in a nursing home that are in wheelchairs, don't be afraid to get on your knees in front of the wheelchairs and look at people in the eye and talk to them. But I would encourage you to speak, make good eye contact, to speak audibly. Can people hear what you're saying? And if you're an observant person, you're paying attention, and you notice most of the people are screwing up their eyebrows, or they're leaning forward, or they're leaning over to the next person saying, "What did he say?" You're not talking loud enough. So learn to talk more loudly. Speak up, Or even if you see that look of confusion, you're making eye contact, you're observing people. People look confused. Back up. Maybe I need to say that differently, or maybe I had a slip of the tongue, and I said something like, pull your pocket out of your knife or something, and so you have to back up and say it again. And, as you read people, you don't always catch it, but sometimes you can tell, I need to redo that. I need to say that again, or I need to speak up. Or if you have a ministry to older people, it's so important that you try to speak loudly for them, because a lot of them are hard of hearing. Work hard at being clear and concise. And I say this especially to those of you that are getting a higher education. It's a privilege. For you seminarians, I'm so thankful you're in seminary. It's a wonderful privilege. I'm thankful that you're in school. That's a valuable resource you have, but it carries with it a particular danger. And that is, the more education you get, the more tempting it is to try to impress people with your education. I want to sound profound. I want to sound erudite, so let me use a bunch of fancy words here. Let me throw in a few Greek and Hebrew words. Let me impress people with just how much I know. And I remember when I was a young preacher, hearing an older preacher say, if you're going over people's heads, it might not be that you're so profound. It might be that you're just a bad aim. I thought, well, there's a lot of truth to that. Might be that you're just a bad aim. And I would tell you that if you're speaking to a multi-generational group, speak so the kids will understand. Speak so the kids will understand. If the kids get it, maybe the adults will too. But speak so the kids will get it. Now, sometimes you have to challenge people, stretch people a bit. You can't just talk in simple words all the time. You want to stretch people a bit. But try to make sure that everybody can learn something. I think it's wonderful when kids can come up to me after I've preached and say, Pastor Larry, I was thinking about what you said, and I was thinking, I have a question about this or that. I'll tell you what, that excites me more than if a seminary prof would come up to me and say, Larry, I think that was really cool what you said. When the kids come up to me and want to interact, I'm so thankful. I want the kids in our church to grow up thinking the Word of God is something wonderful to study, and you know what, it's for us too, and we can understand it. And so work at being simple, work at being concise. Involve people in discussion. Don't dominate the conversation. People will learn more if they're involved. Now, it gets harder the larger the group gets. But if you have a smaller group, maybe it's family devotions. Maybe you're leading family devotions. I'd encourage you to involve your kids. Have them read. Have them answer questions. Have them lead as they get older. Have them lead family devotions. But you involve them in it. You're leading a small group. Prepare ahead of time open questions that people can answer. So that they're actually having to think and interact. They'll remember more that way. And I think even in a larger setting, it's good to ask questions, even if you can't dialogue a whole lot in a larger group. You can ask questions in a way that involve people, even if they're not answering out loud, they're answering in their head. Oh, he just asked me a question. What is he in? Oh, yeah, and you're asking, even if they're rhetorical questions, they're questions, and people are thinking. So learn to ask questions involving people in discussion. and that'll help you in your communication skills. Just want to encourage you, if you say, I'm not a gifted speaker, don't despair. Some of the best leaders in the history of God's church weren't necessarily gifted speakers. The Apostle Paul did not consider himself a gifted speaker. Well, he's a good writer, though, wasn't he? There are people like that, aren't there? There are people that are just wonderful writers, and we don't have any tapes or CDs of Paul, but according to his own testimony, he wasn't really that dynamic as a speaker. Apollos might have been, but Paul didn't consider himself that way. But work at it. Work at your communication skills in everyday life. If you're conscious about it, you are deliberately working at your communication skills. You're sitting at the table with your family. You're in the break room at work talking to people. Whatever context you find yourself, work at your communication skills. Learn to look people in the eye. Learn to ask them open questions. Learn to encourage and interact with them. In whatever context you're in, just always be working at your communication skills, and it'll help you grow in that way. Those of you that have families, meal times around the table are just irreplaceable. Use those times. Turn off the TV, put down the newspaper, and talk as a family. Learn to ask questions, interact, sharpen your kids, asking them important questions.